The sterile white chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with tension as Valthera, a scarred Corvan warrior, faced the panel of alien investigators. Once proud exoskeleton bore deep gouges, and her left arm hung useless at her side.
"Stay."
"Your name and rank for the record," commanded High Arbiter Kelenosh. "Valthera, former battle commander of the Corvan Third Fleet," she rasped, her voice barely audible. "I am the sole survivor of what your files call the human incident." The panel exchanged glances. The Corvan Empire had been the galaxy's most feared military force for 3 centuries. Their sudden retreat from human space had shocked every civilization. "Tell us what happened," Kelenosh said softly. Valthera's eyes grew distant. "We thought they were weak. The humans sent ambassadors, soft creatures named Huan-Wu and Yunji. They spoke of peace, trade, cooperation. We laughed. In our culture, such words meant surrender." She paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "We're so very wrong." The medical scanners attached to Valthera's body beeped constantly, monitoring her vital signs. Every few seconds, the machines would emit a soft warning chime as her stress levels spiked. The other council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had seen many war veterans before, but none quite like this. Valthera's hands trembled. As she reached for the water container placed before her, the simple act of drinking seemed to cause her pain. Her exoskeleton, once a beautiful deep purple that marked her as Corvan nobility, is now a patchwork of scars and synthetic repair. "Patches. The humans arrived at our border systems 3 cycles ago," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "Their ships were small, nothing impressive. We've seen cargo haulers with better armor plating. Ambassador Haianwu stepped out of his vessel wearing what looked like ceremonial robes, not battle gear." The holographic recorder in the center of the table flickered to life, displaying grainy footage of the first human diplomatic vessel. It was indeed unremarkable, a simple white ship with blue markings and what appeared to be scientific equipment rather than weapons. Haianwu spoke our language perfectly. It's not just the words, but the proper honorifics, the correct gestures. It was clear they had studied us extensively. When he bowed in the traditional greeting, every warrior in our welcoming party laughed. In Corvan culture, you only bow to someone after you've defeated them in combat. Valthera's mandibles clicked again, a nervous habit that had developed since her return. Ambassador Yunji was different. She didn't bow. She stood straight and looked directly into our battlelord's eyes. No species had ever dared do that. Before our leader, Thekvash, found it amusing rather than insulting. The council members leaned forward. The Corvan Empire's reputation for swift and brutal conquest was legendary. Entire star systems had fallen within days of Corvan fleets arriving. The idea that any species could stand against them seemed impossible. "The humans offered us technology," Valthera continued. "Medical advances, agricultural improvements, something they called entertainment media. Thekvash demanded to know what they wanted in return. Haianwu simply said they wanted to be friends." A bitter laugh escaped from Valthera's throat. "Friends. The word doesn't translate well into Corvan. The closest meaning we have is useful subordinate. We thought the humans were offering to become our servants." "When did you realize they weren't?" asked Arbiter Zelthine, a crystalline being whose species had survived Corvan aggression only. "By hiding in asteroid fields. During the feast," Valthera replied. "The humans brought gifts. It's not weapons or tribute, but food from their world." Ambassador Yunji explained. Each dish told stories about their cultures, their festivals. She spoke about human children playing games, about their art, their music. The scarred warrior's voice grew quieter. But it was Ambassador Haianwu who should have warned us. When Nekavash asked about human military capabilities, Haianwu's expression changed. Just for a moment. He said, "We really hope you never have to find out." The way he said it. There was no threat in his voice, only sadness. The feast lasted for hours. The humans shared their food, their stories, even taught some of our younger warriors their games. When it was time to leave, Yunji hugged several of our soldiers. Actual physical contact. In our culture, you only touch someone you trust completely or someone you're about to kill. Velthara struggled to her feet, her damaged leg servo whining in protest. That should have been our first clue. The humans weren't afraid of us, not even a little bit. Every other species in the galaxy shows some fear when meeting Corvins 4. The first time, the humans treated us like old friends they were meeting for the first time. 3 days after the humans left, Vekvosh declared them weak and ordered the Third Fleet to prepare for conquest. Easy prey, he called them. The entire crew was excited. We thought it would be like every other campaign, quick, decisive, profitable. The monitoring equipment began beeping more rapidly as Velthara's distress increased. We had no idea we weren't preparing for a conquest. We were preparing for a lesson in humility that would change the entire galaxy. Our war doctrine was simple, Velthara continued. Strike fast, overwhelm, accept surrender. When we arrived at their colony world Kepler 4 to be, we expected the humans to bow like every other species. The holographic display showed the battle. Formation 6 massive Corvin dreadnoughts against a small human settlement. Their leader, a human named Tajin, opened communications. He didn't beg for mercy. He asked if we were sure we wanted to do this. My commander, the Kennel, found this amusing. One final chance to surrender, he told the human. Velthara's claws scraped against the metal table. Tajin looked directly at the screen and said, "Then you've chosen war with humanity. You have no idea what you've just done." He didn't sound afraid. He sounded sorry for us. The first assault was routine. We bombarded their outer defenses, expecting immediate capitulation. Instead, something impossible happened. The humans didn't retreat, they evolved. Within hours, they had analyzed our weapon patterns and adapted their shields. The Arbiter leaned forward. That's tactically improbable. That's what we thought. But then we met Captain Jae-hoon and his strike team. The holographic display shifted, showing the human colony from orbit. It looked peaceful, almost vulnerable. Small domed structures dotted the landscape, connected by transport tubes. Agricultural fields stretched for kilometers. Nothing suggested military capability. Kepler 4 to be was supposed to be a farming world, Velthara explained. Intelligence reports showed 30,000 civilians, mostly families. No military installations, no weapons manufacturing. Seemed perfect for our standard intimidation tactics. She gestured to the display. Our ships took position in standard formation. Humans had maybe 20 small patrol craft, nothing bigger than a courier vessel. Commander the Coniel was practically laughing as he opened the communication channel. The recording began to play. The image showed a middle-aged human male with kind eyes and graying hair. He wore simple colonial administrator clothing, not military uniform. "I am Tyajin, elected representative of New Sol Colony. I can see you're here with warships. Before this goes any further, I need to ask, are you absolutely certain you want to attack human civilians?" On the recording, a harsh Corvin voice responded, "Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Tajin's expression didn't change. He sighed deeply, like a parent disappointed in a child's poor choice. "I was really hoping you'd reconsider. We sent our ambassadors specifically to avoid this situation. Your ambassadors proved human weakness." Decanul's voice boomed. "Kneel before the Corvin Empire?" The human administrator shook his head slowly. "Then you've chosen war with humanity. You've no idea what you've just done." He paused, looking directly into the camera. "I'm genuinely sorry for what's about to happen to you." The transmission cut off. Velthara's mandibles clicked rapidly. We couldn't understand it. Tajin wasn't threatening us. He wasn't posturing or trying to buy time. He seemed genuinely sad that we had refused to leave peacefully. The Cannel ordered immediate bombardment. Our plasma cannons lit up their outer settlements. Standard procedure: destroy enough infrastructure to break their will to resist. We expected panic, evacuation requests, surrender offers. The hologram showed energy beams striking the colony's outer ring. Explosions bloomed across the landscape. Something was wrong, Velthara continued. The humans weren't running. They weren't even taking cover. They were working. Moving equipment, repositioning defensive platforms, coordinating like they had practiced this exact scenario. In the first hour, they had moved all their civilians into underground shelters we didn't even know existed. By the second hour, they were firing back. Their weapons were primitive, but their targeting was perfect. Arbiter Zelthan interrupted. How could colonists have military precision? That's what we wondered. Then we intercepted their communications. Every human adult on that colony had military training. It's not professional soldiers, but everyone knew basic tactics, weapon operation, emergency procedures. Their farmers could operate anti-aircraft guns. Teachers knew how to coordinate defensive positions. Valthera's voice grew strained. The real shock came when their reinforcements arrived. Captain Jehoon brought 12 ships-converted cargo haulers and passenger transports. We had 6 military dreadnoughts. Should have been a massacre. The display showed the human vessels approaching. They looked cobbled together, patched with different metals. Clearly civilian ships hastily converted for combat. Jehoon opened communications with us, not with colony administrator Tejin. He was young, maybe 30 human years, with calm eyes and a voice that carried absolute confidence. Corvin Fleet, this is Captain Jehoon of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. You are attacking human civilians. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Deknol was furious. You dare threaten us with cargo ships? He roared. Jehoon's response chilled us to the bone. These aren't threats. They're promises. Last chance to leave with your lives. We opened fire on his little fleet. Our weapons should have vaporized those converted freighters instantly. Instead, they scattered like a school of fish, moving in perfect coordination. Their ships started, dancing around our plasma beams like they could predict where we would shoot. Valthara stood up, pacing despite her injured leg. Then Captain Jehoon did something that broke every rule of space combat. He flew his ship directly at our flagship. Ataram used to get close enough to deploy something. Boarding pods, asked an arbiter. Worse humans? Captain Jehoon. And 5 crew members in nothing but environmental suits, using personal jetpacks to cross the void between ships. They were flying through space like tiny missiles, completely exposed to our defensive fire. Our gunners couldn't hit them. Moved too unpredictably, too fast. Within minutes, they had attached themselves to our hull and were cutting their way inside. 6 humans, armed with basic weapons, had just declared war on a dreadnought with 800 Corvin warriors aboard. Valthera's voice dropped to a whisper. That should have been suicide. Instead, it was the beginning of our education in what humans call asymmetric warfare. Jehoon led a counterattack with only 12 humans against our landing force of 300. Valthera's voice trembled. They shouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. The hologram shifted to show the battlefield. Instead, they lasted 6 hours and killed 2/3 of our troops. They used everything mining equipment as weapons. Atmospheric processors as bombs, even their own wounded as bait for ambushes. The worst part wasn't their weapons, it was their eyes. When human soldier named Dayun got shot, she kept fighting. Not from berserker rage, but from cold calculation. She used her own blood to blind our sensors while her comrade Minho flanked. Valthara's voice cracked. They weren't just fighting to win. They were fighting to send a message. Every death, every sacrifice was teaching other humans how to kill us more efficiently. Then their reinforcements arrived. Commander Soyoung brought a fleet of mining ships' civilian vessels. We prepared to slaughter them. Instead, they rammed our dreadnoughts at near light speed. The humans had turned cargo haulers into kinetic weapons. But that was suicide, one arbiter gasped. Yes, and they did it with smiles on their faces. Because while we were fighting the miners, Captain Wu Jin was infiltrating our command ship. The holographic display zoomed in on the colony's surface, showing the initial landing zone where Corvin dropships had deposited their ground forces. The terrain was rocky with scattered mining equipment and storage facilities. Our soldiers were elite warriors, Valthara continued, her claws digging into the table. Each one had conquered dozens of worlds. We landed in standard formation, expecting the humans to either flee or mount a desperate last stand from defensive positions. Instead, Captain Jehoon and his team simply vanished. One moment they were visible on our scanners, the next they were gone, not cloaked. They had somehow become invisible to our most advanced detection systems. The hologram showed Corvin troops advancing through the mining complex, their weapons ready, but finding no targets. For 20 minutes, we searched. Then the attacks began. Not frontal assaults, but something far more terrifying. A human named Byung-ho appeared behind our rear guard, eliminated 4 soldiers with a modified plasma cutter, then disappeared. Again, before we could respond. "A plasma cutter?" asked Arbiter Kelenosh. "That's a tool, not a weapon." Exactly. Humans had weaponized their industrial equipment. Mining lasers became sniper rifles. Construction mechs became assault platforms. Even their food processors had been modified to create explosive devices. Velthara's mandibles clicked in distress. But the real horror was their coordination. When Soldier Dayun took a direct hit from our heavy weapons, she should have died. Instantly. Instead, she crawled behind cover and began transmitting data to her comrades. The hologram replayed the scene. Dayun, wounded and bleeding, used her own blood to coat a sensor array, disrupting Corvin targeting systems. While the enemy troops tried to recalibrate their equipment, her teammate Minho moved through their blind spots. She spent her final moments analyzing our weapon signatures, our movement patterns, our communication frequencies. When she finally collapsed, she had transmitted enough intelligence to turn the entire battle. The humans started predicting our tactics. When we moved left, they were already positioned to attack from the right. When we called for artillery support, it already relocated to areas we couldn't target without destroying our own forces. Velthara stood up, pacing despite her injuries. Then came the moment that still haunts my dreams. Human engineer Sang-min had been captured during the initial assault. We thought he was just a maintenance worker, so we left him with minimal guard. He escaped? Worse, he didn't escape, he studied us. While pretending to be unconscious, he memorized our equipment, our procedures, our weaknesses. When he finally made his move, he had already identified exactly how to disable our entire communication network. The hologram showed a complex technical diagram. Sang-min crawled through the colony's maintenance tunnels and accessed our command relay. With nothing but basic tools, he introduced a virus into our system that caused our own equipment to malfunction. Our armor's targeting systems began showing false readings. Our weapons would fire at phantom targets while real humans attacked from different angles. Within an hour, our elite force was scattered, confused, and fighting shadows. Commander So-young arrived with a mining fleet. Velthara's voice dropped to a whisper. We saw 30 civilian vessels approaching and prepared for easy target practice. Our ship's weapons locked onto the lead vessel. So-young opened communications. She was an older human woman, probably a grandmother. She spoke calmly, like she was discussing the weather. Corvin fleet, you have 30 seconds to cease fire and withdraw. This is your final warning. Commander the Kano laughed. You threaten us with cargo ships? So-young's response was simple. No, I'm threatening you with Newton's laws of physics. The hologram showed what happened next. The mining ships suddenly accelerated to incredible speeds, their improvised engines pushing them far beyond safe operating limits. They weren't trying to fight us conventionally, Velthara explained. It loaded their cargo holds with dense mining ore and turned themselves into kinetic projectiles. Each ship became a guided missile traveling at near light speed. The first impact destroyed our second dreadnought completely. The explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. The second mining ship punched through our flagship's shields like they were paper, but the crews and arbiter started. Smiling, Velthara finished. We intercepted their final transmissions. Commander So-young's last words were, "Tell Earth that New Sol Colony sends its regards." Her crew was laughing, actually laughing as they died. They weren't sacrificing themselves in desperation. They were executing a carefully planned strategy. While we were dealing with the mining ships, smaller human vessels were deploying something else entirely. Captain Wu Jin and his infiltration team had used the chaos to approach our command ship. They didn't try to board through the docking bays or blast their way through the hull. Instead, they came through the waste disposal system. Velthara's voice filled with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. Wu Jin and 5 humans crawled through sewage pipes for 3 hours to reach our ship's core systems. They moved through areas we never thought to guard because no rational species would endure such conditions. When they finally emerged inside our ship, they weren't there to plant bombs or take hostages. They were there to learn, study us from the inside, and transmit that knowledge back to other human forces. The humans weren't just fighting a battle. They were conducting a scientific experiment with us as test subjects. Every engagement, every loss, every small victory was teaching them how to defeat us more efficiently. That's when we realized the terrifying truth. Humans weren't trying to win this fight. They were trying to win every future fight against every Corvin ship that would ever threaten their species. Wu Jin and his team of 5 humans did something no military strategist would believe possible, Belthera continued, her voice hollow. They captured our flagship from the inside. The display showed the Corvon command vessel. They didn't storm the bridge with overwhelming force. They used our own psychology against us. Human engineer named Hygiene posed as a prisoner, allowing herself to be taken to our interrogation center. While we questioned her, she was actually mapping our ship's systems through microtransmitters. Meanwhile, Medic Dong Haiyan infiltrated our medical bay by pretending to treat wounded prisoners. He released a non-lethal toxin that made our crew drowsy, nothing fatal, just enough to slow our reflexes. Althera's mandibles clicked in distress. The breakthrough came when pilot Unicio crashed his fighter into our hangar bay. We thought it was a failed attack. Instead, he delivered a strike team led by Kyunho directly into our ship's heart. In 30 minutes, 6 humans had taken control of a vessel crewed by 800 Corvins. But here's what terrified us most. They didn't execute the prisoners. They studied us. They learned our language, our tactics, our weaknesses. Then they broadcast everything to the human fleet. The final battle lasted 18 hours. By the end, humans were predicting our moves before we made them. They'd turned warfare into a science. The massive Corvin dreadnought dominated the holographic display, its dark hull bristling with weapon systems and armor plating. The ship was 5 kilometers long, built to intimidate as much as to destroy. Our flagship, the Death's Honor, had never been boarded in 3 centuries of warfare, Velthera explained. The ship carried our most advanced weapons, our best warriors, and our supreme commander. Taking it should have required a fleet of battleships. Instead, Captain Wu Jin approached with a plan so insane that it actually worked. He had studied our prisoner protocols during the ground battle, watching how we processed captured enemies. He knew we would separate prisoners by rank and specialty. The hologram zoomed in on the ship's detention levels. Engineer Hajin volunteered to be captured. She allowed herself to be taken during a staged retreat, making sure our soldiers saw her working on human defense systems. When we brought her aboard, we immediately took her to interrogation. What we didn't know was that Hajin had swallowed dozens of microtransmitters before her capture. Each one was smaller than a grain of sand and designed to activate when exposed to different types of ship systems. Velthera's claws scraped nervously across the table. As we moved her through the ship, the transmitters mapped our internal layout. Power conduits, life support systems, weapon controls, bridge access codes. Everything was being recorded and transmitted to Captain Wu Jin's team. The interrogation lasted for hours. Haijin answered our questions truthfully, telling us about human defensive capabilities and colony layouts. She seemed broken, defeated. Our interrogators were pleased with her cooperation. They had no idea she was simultaneously downloading our ship's computer systems through contact points in her restraints. Every time they asked about human technology, she was learning about ours. The display shifted to show the medical bay. Meanwhile, Medic Dong Haiyan had approached our ship in a damaged escape pod, claiming to be wounded. Our medical protocols required us to treat injured prisoners before interrogation. Dong Hoon was brilliant. He actually was injured deliberately. He'd given himself wounds that would require treatment in our medical facility, ensuring he would be taken to the most sensitive area of the ship. While our medical staff treated his injuries, he was observing everything. Our anatomy, our medical equipment, our emergency procedures, but most importantly, he was preparing a special gift for us. Velthara's voice grew tighter. Donghian had bioengineered a compound using his own blood. When released into our ship's atmosphere, it would make Corvins drowsy and slow their reflexes. Not enough to kill, but enough to create windows of opportunity. The compound was stored in fake medical implants in his body. As our doctors worked on him, he gradually released the toxin into the medical bay's air recycling system. Within an hour, it had spread throughout the ship. We didn't notice at first. Corvins are naturally resilient to most toxins. The crew just felt slightly tired, like they needed more rest. Combat efficiency dropped by maybe 10%. Not enough to raise alarms, but enough to matter. The hologram suddenly exploded with action as a small human. Fighter craft smashed through the dreadnought's hangar bay doors. That's when pilot Unesio made his entrance, Velthara continued. His fighter was already heavily damaged from the space battle. To our sensors, it looked like he was trying to escape and had lost control of his ship. We opened fire, but he managed to crash land in our main hangar. Our security teams rushed to secure the wreckage, expecting to find a dying pilot. Instead, they found something much worse. Unesio had survived the crash and was already moving, but he wasn't trying to fight his way out. He was opening his ship's cargo bay and releasing 4 more humans who had been hiding inside. Strike Team Leader Kung Ho emerged first, followed by specialists Junwoo, Sunhee, and Hayoung. They moved like ghosts through our corridors, avoiding patrols and using the intelligence that Hajin had gathered to navigate directly to critical systems. Velthara stood and began pacing, her injured leg servos whining. The humans split up. Kyunho went for the bridge. Junwoo headed to engineering. Sunhee targeted communications. Hayoung went after our weapon systems. They moved with surgical precision. No unnecessary violence, no random destruction. Every action was calculated to achieve maximum effect with minimum resistance. Kungho reached the bridge first. Instead of bursting in with weapons blazing, he waited. He studied our command protocols through security cameras, learned our hierarchy, identified our weaknesses. When he finally made his move, he didn't attack the bridge crew. He simply walked in during a shift change wearing a Corvin uniform that Haijin had described from memory. In the dim lighting and with everyone affected by Donghyan's toxin, he looked like just another tired crew member. By the time anyone realized he was human, he had already taken control of the command console, not through force, but through knowledge. Haijin had given him our access codes, our command structure, even our emergency protocols. The ship's AI accepted his commands because he knew exactly how to phrase them in proper Corvin military terminology. Within minutes, he had locked out the bridge crew and assumed command of the entire vessel. But that wasn't the worst part. Velthara's voice cracked. When the humans had secured the ship, they didn't execute us. They didn't torture us for information. They studied us like specimens. They interviewed our crew, learned our tactics, recorded our responses to different situations. They were building a complete psychological profile of Corvan military thinking. Then they did something that still gives me nightmares. They broadcast everything they had learned to every human ship in the sector. Our weaknesses, our blind spots, our standard procedures, all of it was transmitted across human communication networks. The final space battle became a teaching exercise. Human ships would attempt new tactics, test different approaches, refine their methods. They treated our fleet like a training simulation. By the 18th hour, they knew us better than we knew ourselves. They could predict our movements, counter our strategies, exploit our psychological weaknesses. We weren't fighting humans anymore. We were fighting ourselves, reflected back at us with all our flaws magnified. That's when Commander Vekanul finally understood what Captain Yin had meant when he said we had chosen war with humanity. We hadn't attacked a single colony. We had challenged an entire species to become better at warfare than us. They had accepted that challenge with terrifying enthusiasm. Velthara stood slowly, her injuries evident in every movement. The human admiral who accepted our surrender was named Ji-hoon. He was younger than my youngest warrior, but his eyes held the weight of absolute certainty. He told me something I'll never forget. We didn't want this war. Well, what, since you brought it to us, we'll finish it properly. Then he handed me a data chip containing the locations of every Corvin military installation, of every supply depot, every secret base. Information they'd gathered in just 3 days of fighting. The chamber fell silent. Take this to your leaders, Ji-hoon said. Tell them humanity is claiming the right of permanent peace. Any species that attacks human civilians will face total war, not conquest extinction. We've proven we can do it. We really hope we never have to. Velthara's voice dropped to a whisper. That's why I'm here, to warn you all. Humans don't fight like soldiers, they fight like scientists solving a problem. And they've identified war itself as a problem requiring a permanent solution. She looked at each arbiter in turn. The galaxy thinks it knows what makes humans dangerous. The truth is worse. What we saw wasn't humanity at war. It was humanity being patient, being merciful, being restrained. They could have wiped us out completely. Instead, they chose to make us too afraid to ever threaten them again. That's not the act of warriors. That's the act of something far more terrifying. Gods preserve us all if humanity ever stops being merciful. The moment Admiral Ji-hoon stepped onto the bridge of the captured Corvin flagship, everything changed. Velthara had expected to see a grizzled veteran scarred by countless battles. Instead, she found herself face to face with someone who looked barely past his military academy years. He couldn't have been older than 30 human years, Velthara continued, her voice still filled with disbelief. Short black hair, clean uniform, calm expression. If I had passed him on a space station, I would have mistaken him for a junior officer on his first assignment. But his eyes... She paused, mandibles clicking nervously. His eyes held the weight of someone who had seen the entire universe and found it wanting. When he looked at our defeated crew, there was no anger, no triumph, just a deep sadness that made my exoskeleton crawl. The holographic display showed the aftermath of the battle. Corvin ships hung dead in space, their systems disabled but their crews alive. Human vessels moved between them like medical ships, providing aid to the wounded. Admiral Ji-hoon walked through our ship like he owned it, greeted our wounded soldiers by name, speaking perfect Corvin. He knew our ranks, our family structures, even our personal histories. How was that possible after only 3 days of fighting? The humans had built complete psychological profiles of our entire fleet, Velthara explained. Every intercepted communication, every tactical decision, every emotional response had been analyzed and cataloged. They knew us better than our own commanders did. When Ji-hoon reached me, I was prepared to die with honor. Instead, he helped me to my feet and offered me medical treatment. You're Velthara, he said. Third daughter of the Karak clan, graduated top of your class from the Corvin War Academy. You've never lost a ground battle until today. I asked him how he knew all that. He smiled sadly and said, because we had to learn everything about you to make sure this never happens again. The scene shifted to show Ji-hoon standing before the assembled Corvin prisoners. He wasn't giving a victory speech or demanding tribute. He was conducting what looked like a classroom lecture. The Admiral began explaining exactly how the humans had defeated us. Velthara continued. Step by step, decision by decision. He showed us our tactical errors, our strategic mistakes, our psychological blind spots. It was like watching a scientist dissect a specimen. Your species fights for dominance, Ji-hoon told us. Use fear and overwhelming force to break enemy morale. It's an effective strategy against most opponents, but it assumes your enemy thinks like you do. He pulled up tactical displays showing the entire battle from the human perspective. We don't fight for dominance, we fight for survival. You threatened our civilians. You didn't challenge our warriors. You challenged our entire species to become better at protecting what we love. Velthara's claws scraped against the table as she remembered. That's when he showed us the data chip. Small device no bigger than my thumb. This contains everything, he said. Every Corvin military installation, supply depot, hidden base, and secret weapon project. Your ship's computers were very helpful. The information was impossible. Our most classified secrets, locations known only to the highest commanders, strategic plans that should have been beyond human reach. They had somehow accessed our entire military database. How? I asked him. Ji-hoon's expression grew even sadder. Because we had to. He forced us to become the kind of species that could do this. The hologram showed the data chip's contents: star maps, facility layouts, personnel records, weapon specifications, and complete intelligence breakdown of the Corvin Empire's military capabilities. Admiral Ji-hoon explained that while we were fighting their colony, human intelligence teams had been infiltrating our home systems, not to attack, but to gather information. They had spent 72 hours learning everything there was to know about Corvin civilization. "We know where your families live," he told us quietly. "We know your trade routes, your food production facilities, your nursery worlds. We've identified every single point of vulnerability in your entire empire." But then he said something that terrified me more than any threat could. "And we're going to forget all of it. We're going to delete this information and pretend we never learned it, because we don't want to be the kind of species that uses such knowledge." Valthera's voice cracked with emotion. He was giving us mercy we didn't deserve and hadn't asked for. But the price was clear. This was the last time humanity would be merciful to anyone who attacked their civilians. "Take this chip to your leaders," Ji-hoon said, pressing the device into my claws. "Show them what we could do, but choose not to. Tell them that humanity is claiming the right of permanent peace. Any species that attacks human civilians in the future will face total war. Not conquest," he emphasized. "Extinction. We've proven we can gather this kind of intelligence in 3 days. Imagine what we could accomplish in 3 months if we stopped being nice about it." The assembled arbiters shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The implications were staggering. I asked him why he was sparing us, Valthara continued. Ji-hoon looked out at the stars through the bridge viewport. "Because war is a problem, and we've found the solution. Make the cost of aggression so terrifying that no rational species will ever choose it. You came here expecting easy conquest. Instead, you found a species that views war as a science to be perfected. We don't want to be good at war, but since you forced us to become good at it, we're going to be the best." He turned back to me with those ancient eyes and that young face. "Go home, Valthera. Tell your leaders what you've seen. Tell them that humanity doesn't want to be anyone's enemy. But if they insist on making us one, we'll be the last enemy they ever have." Valthara stood once more, facing the council with desperate urgency. That was 6 months ago. Since then, not a single Corvin ship has left our home system. Military doctrine has been rewritten around one simple principle: never, ever threaten human civilians. "But that's not why I'm here," she continued. "I'm here because other species need to understand what humanity has become. We're not just another warrior race. We're something unprecedented in galactic history. They've weaponized mercy itself. They've made compassion terrifying. They've turned their restraint into the most powerful deterrent the galaxy has ever seen. Every time a human diplomat offers peace, remember that behind those words stands a species that could destroy you completely, but chooses not to. Every time they extend friendship, remember that they're capable of perfect warfare, but prefer perfect cooperation. The humans have solved the problem of war by becoming too dangerous to fight and too valuable to antagonize. They've made themselves indispensable as allies and unthinkable as enemies." Valthera's final words rang through the silent chamber. What we faced wasn't humanity at war. It was humanity showing us exactly what they were capable of when they stopped being nice. They were patient with us. They were merciful. Gods preserve us all if humanity ever stops being merciful. The chamber remained silent long after Valthara had been escorted away, her warning echoing in the minds of every species representative present. In the weeks that followed, 17 different civilizations would send diplomatic envoys to Earth, all carrying the same message: friendship, trade, and eternal peace. None of them mentioned the data chips their intelligence services had quietly destroyed, or the invasion plans that had been permanently shelved. The age of human warfare was over before it had truly begun. In its place came something far more powerful: the age of human peace, enforced by the terrifying knowledge of what the alternative would cost. The end.